In March 2017, a party in 2 vehicles travelled up through Sarowe to refuel in Rockops and then journey into the Central Kalahari Game Reserve in Botswana. The Deception Valley, Letihau Valley and Passage Valley are fossilised river valleys, and one can travel along these in a loop, staying in several overnight campsites. With an area of about 10% of Botswana's landmass, it is the second largest game reserve in the world and perhaps the remotest part of southern Africa. Visitors have to be fully self-sufficient. One thinks of the Central Kalahari as semi-desert bushveld, but a marked difference after the summer rains and in the dead of winter has been reported. From the turn-off at Rockops, the road was easily passable to the Makweri Gate. Because of the unusually heavy rains before the trip, we had been expecting muddy roads in places, and in fact there was an advisory a few weeks before departure suggesting entry only if there was a second vehicle in the party and the drivers could handle severe muddy conditions. The engines were covered in mud by the time the first campsite was reached. The campsites, hidden for the most part by tall grass or trees from the nearby track, had, except for one camp, a wide clearing, which was important as the ticks and mosquitoes preferred the moist grass, and should you choose to move about at night, any snakes, fat-tailed scorpions or other wildlife could be visible. The ablutions were typical Botswana bushveld constructions. Bring plenty of water for a shower. One campsite seemed to have had a population explosion of ants which responded to vibration, as with every footfall, ants in a radius of a metre or more all turned and moved towards that foot. These ants were hungry and bothersome. Even the visiting mongoose had learned to observe the camp for stray edibles from the safety of the wheel bay. The common tick in the Central Kalahari was bont-legged, as expected in the game areas, and unexpectedly fleet-footed.
Arriving at Focage Campsite, see KTAU3 on the left.
As said before, the campsite in the southwestern part of the loop was remote and had not been cleared after the rainy season, making it not suitable for camping, on the ground or in a rooftop tent, because of the abundance of ticks, mosquitoes and the lack of visibility around the tents. The rains had encouraged the lush growth of grass in the valleys and ancient riverbeds, in places obscuring the view from the tracks, with animals belly deep in grass and ostrich and kori bustards peering over the top of the grass. Seeing resting lion, hyena and other major predators would be difficult unless they chose to rest in the road itself or an area of short grass. The shorter grass was more favoured for grazing, particularly by the smaller buck. Surprising was the rank bush on the hillsides, a haven for the more colourful birds, but again, spotting game in that thick bush was difficult. It will be interesting to contrast this vegetation density with what pertains in the dry late winter months. With high grass in the central strip, a fine mesh grill covering was essential to prevent a build-up of grass and seeds on the hot engine parts with the attendant fire hazard. Clearing the area above the exhaust pipe under the car and clearing the mesh in front of the radiator was an object lesson in how much debris can collect and how it could block the air spaces in a radiator. Along the dry tracks, one needs to keep an eye open not only for the ruts after the rainy season, but also for those creatures who live there. Slow-crossing tortoises and assorted birds using the open spaces. In areas there were large fields of late summer flowers, giving a rest from the endless but varied grass in the pans and river valleys. Don't be fooled. Grasses have flowers too. And what beautiful shapes and forms have developed to benefit from wind pollination. The nests of the white-browed sparrow weaver constantly on one side of the tree is a good navigation aid, but the very different mast weaver nests tend to be over water on any side of the tree. Birds are always around one, so missing out on the big five was not the end of the world. The colourful ones were in the trees, with the little brown jobs in the grasslands. The rufous-naped lark call was widespread. Barn owls screeched overhead at night, and white-faced and spotted eagle owls called in the distance, while one camera-shy owl came visiting. Kills seem to be a big attraction to visitors to any game reserve, but they come in all shapes and sizes. A really dangerous place to be was a campsite crawling with ravenous ants. All creatures have to eat. Mealtime comes at the end of the hunt for food, and again it was the birds that provided the display, with ant or termite, skink, and snake on the menu. Subduing the prospective meal with a few lusty kicks helped the process along. These lappet-faced vultures were taking a water break after their meal. What caused the end of this half-eaten marabou stalk will never be known. Butterflies collect fluid and trace elements at dams, urine splashes, or particularly carnivore dung. There were clusters of African vagrants demonstrating their straight flight pattern, and a few African monarchs on old hyena dung with a striped policeman in attendance. Webs of the social spider, looking like tennis nets, draped over the bushes. The beauty of the reserve is the remoteness, with few vehicles and plenty of time to relax, read and reflect. We savoured the company of grasshoppers, birds, ground squirrels with the white-browed sparrow heavers calling overhead. Red-billed spurfowl signalled dawn or dusk, and scrub hares shared their respective campsite feeding grounds with us. Eventually we had to head for home, driving towards the rising sun with memorable sunsets and sunrises in mind, and interestful days that were hot and clear with scattered cottonwool cumulus clouds overhead.